Everybody. My name is Teri Hunter. I'm an intuitive astrologer, and I'm here today because I want to talk about Mars in Cancer. I want to cover two things. First, I want to talk about Mars's transit through Cancer right now, because as I record this, it is mid-October of 2024, and Mars is in a growing opposition to Pluto in Capricorn, where Pluto will not come back. This opposition is not possible again for the next 248 years. So it is a very potent and important transit. And then I'm going to talk a little bit about what it means for Mars to be in Cancer. So let's just start with that. What does it mean for Mars to be in Cancer? Mars is the sign of the warrior. It's the planet that rules passion and sex and aggression and anger and resentment and competition, battle. It's extremely self focused. It is the first house of the zodiac where the soul comes into the incarnation and rediscovers the physical and how the physical apparatus works. It is extremely masculine in that it rules both Aries and Scorpio, co-rules Scorpio. So it's highly sexual, highly passionate, and often considered a bit harsh. Its natural aggressive tendencies in the sign of Cancer are dampened, they're muted. They are, depending upon the aspects in your natal chart, if you have trines and sextiles, you're going to see Mars feel a little bit more comfortable in Cancer. But if you're seeing a lot of squares or oppositions, you're going to see Mars very challenged to assert itself. Mars is in what they call fall in Cancer. It is where the planet doesn't feel necessarily respected. It's where its voice is not necessarily recognized or heard. And because Cancer is such an emotional sign, so aware of other people, the family, the nurturing family, that Mars can feel that it cannot express itself authentically, and that can kind of shut down the energy altogether. We will feel because Mars is a natural fighter, and Cancer is not at all. There is this feeling of potentially, I think that there can be a lot of resentment that can build up in the Mars energy because Mars needs to find a constructive outlet for expression. And that could be working out. It could be, sex could be a constructive expression, but communication may be challenging because here that knowing that you're not allowed to say things how you feel them in Cancer could dumb that down, meaning um, create that resentment because you're more aware of your aggressive tendencies. So you're going to try to mute them. And in muting them, it may be disempowering. There's a sense of defeat here where, where Mars in a fire sign will go into a situation and feel itself very strong. Here, Mars is having to swim through emotional waters that are just completely uncomfortable. And in that, I kind of think of fire, hot, and water creates steam. So you could see here, with depending upon the aspects in the natal chart, somebody who's a bit moody, somebody who's a bit passive aggressive, somebody who tends to communicate indirectly because they're the crab, right? So they're going to crawl back and forth. The shadow side of Cancer is it feels a little insecure. It doesn't have a real solid footing. The ocean tides come up and the crab is kind of vulnerable and susceptible to the ocean tides. And if we equate the ocean tides to emotion, that's what we're seeing is Mars being vulnerable to emotions. You can also see Mars being focused on creating security, creating a sense of feeling very passionate about the home environment. That's very on a brighter side. You can also see a warring in the home, this quiet tension. And again, depending upon the aspects in the natal chart, will reveal how Mars is going to show up in Cancer. It's also going to always square, Cancer always squares Aries. So there's that natural tension is just always going to be there. It's how am I going to use that natural tension? Cardinal signs are, they move, but they're also rather balanced. You know, they're initiators. And so this would be an initiation, or the potentials of being aware of the hues of my emotions and then constructively demonstrating those. Let me see my other notes. Oh, this can also make, interestingly enough, this Mars energy can make the Mars person, very dominant in the home. Sometimes it will indicate a military home or a home that is structured in many ways, but oftentimes we're dealing more with the personality traits of Mars. I'm going to defend my home. I'm going to be very patriotic. Mars in Cancer could be a flag waving patriot for their country. They could be very invested in the philosophies and ideologies of their homeland, the traditions of their homeland. We can also see Mars wanting to create a large family, wanting to build a family that, you know, sort of represents that masculine, virile energy. And that doesn't matter whether it's the female or the male, but there is that tendency to want to use sex to build security, hence many people in the family. So that's kind of an interesting dynamic. You can also see with Mars in Cancer, you can see a partner that's very intuitively connected and wanting to please the other person. And I think sometimes to their detriment. And again, this is going to depend on the aspects, because I think the squares will show up with the more harsher, frustrated aspects. And then the sextiles and the trines are going to support the softer side of Mars. And of course, an opposition will represent something outside of myself that challenges me. So Mars's opportunity when it's in your natal chart is to be able to traverse the element of fire, passion, the natural competitive nature of Mars can be very empowering, inspiring when it's used for everyone to create a win-win. So even though you may be a fierce competitor, how you win really is important. And here with Mars in Cancer, you're going to be more emotionally, initially you may not be, but you will be trained to be more emotionally aware of others and how your anger, frustration, aggression, assertiveness affects other people. So now what I want to talk about is Mars's transit in 2024. It's 2024 right now, mid-October, as I said earlier, and Mars is in a growing opposition with Pluto in Capricorn. Mars is exalted in Capricorn. So Mars feels very strong in Capricorn. But now Mars is in fall, where there's almost this natural kind of really concern about defeat, about feeling powerless, about feeling not strong enough. And we see Pluto, who is very strong, bringing up this underbelly. Pluto is currently hovering at 29 degrees of Capricorn, which is really powerful because it is the degree of mastery. It is where the planet has gone through this whole house starting in 2008. And here in the United States, we saw a lot of changes in 2008 and political things that happened that were unprecedented. And it sort of has set the tone for the journey we have had as Pluto ends its sojourn through Capricorn and is now tasked to master its fears, its trepidations, where there has been power and control. The 10th house of Capricorn naturally rules government. It rules structures that are outside of our personal structure, but dictate our personal lives. It's authority. It is our public image and our status. And Pluto has been bringing up this psychological underbelly where power and control has been used out of balance. Now, Mars, who is actually, now this is an interesting thing because Mars and Pluto both rule Scorpio. So there is a psychological awareness in both of these planets. And Mars can use that psychological awareness for warfare, to actually use your fears, your trepidations, your concerns, your holes, your nooks and your crannies against you. And now there's this push pull, this opposition that will not happen again for 248 years. And I think this is very, very significant because while Pluto and Mars will make oppositions again, they will be in Aquarius for the next 20 years and then move on from there. So what we're doing is we're really having an opportunity to look as a result of outside influences, which I think in this particular opposition, I think Pluto is the stronger planet because Pluto is in a sign that's not necessarily emotional. Pluto itself, while it has a heart and on the face of the planet, Pluto rules billionaires and power and control, and it's really a balance because you can use your power for the light or you can use your power to manipulate others. And in this particular case with Mars's opposition and Mars feeling so disempowered in Cancer, there's a frustration. There is a lack of feeling like I'm powerful in my own life, to be powerful over my home, for my home to thrive, for my family to thrive. And this is a direct result as of whatever authority, government, structures, even, the sign of Capricorn can rule big corporations, like big banking corporations or big, I think of Cisco and I think of, Amazon, and I think of just these big, huge corporations. So what we're going to see as Mars and Pluto become more intense is when we get to the 29th degree, where Mars is tasked to master the emotional nature of Cancer, and Pluto is tasked to master where authority and government has repressed and limited and oppressed and, created a dynamic where people cannot build. This is going to become very, very stressful for people. It's a transit that's going to bring unconscious anger. It's a transit that's going to bring old fears that you haven't looked at in a while. And all of a sudden these fears are now, front and center. And you're like, whoa, wait a minute. I thought I was done with that. I thought I had built myself a sense of security. I thought I had sort of, when I think of Mars's energy, Mars is a very big hero energy. And when I look at it in Cancer, this is patriots. This is people who fight for their country. This is our heroes, our veterans. And so there could very well be things that of a nature where the hero energy is being challenged by the structure. And the Mars energy is being tasked in Cancer to really be aware of an emotional nature so that it can make a choice and use the higher vibrations. The thing about Mars is that I always think Mars is the best warrior when Mars has an emotional IQ, because truly that's where you can be the most, masterful and manipulative and get people to do what you want them to do. And you can call it bad or you can call it good. But when you're fighting with someone, if you know where their weaknesses are, you have an advantage. And usually the weakness is an emotional fear. So this is where Mars can actually be much more emotionally aware, not only of his own fears and trepidations, but of those around him, and therefore being a more strategic and more effectual hero or warrior, depending on what's necessary in your particular situation. One other thing that can happen in this particular opposition is that history can repeat itself, meaning in your personal life, you could find that Some things that you thought were long done, long over with, are coming back up. And it might even feel sort of random. It might feel as if um, it might feel even a little bit unfair, to be honest with you. But at the same time, there could be just a little bit of an opportunity to see where we still tend to make decisions based on old imprints or old emotional triggers. That's a better way to put it. This Pluto Mars opposition can bring up a historic trigger to be reworked, revisited, to be looked at from a way, more intuitive, emotional way. And when I think of intuition, I think of it as allowing me an opportunity to see how it's serving me versus tanking me or pulling me under. So for about 2 or 3 weeks, the end of October, all the way through the United States presidential election until mid-November, we're going to feel this influence. So as I always like to say, forewarned is forearmed. And in this way, it's about being armed emotionally, being aware of your own triggers, your own resentments, your own angers, where you feel repressed, where you feel other people have dominion over you. They dominate you in some way. And then allowing yourself to use the constructive sides of the planet to take your power back. And then Mars will move into Leo, and it will feel a lot better when it moves into Leo. And then in about 2 years, we'll experience a Mars Pluto opposition with them in Leo and Aquarius. And we'll talk about that later. So thank you so much for watching. Please like, please comment, please subscribe, please share, whatever, follow. I'm not sure what platform you're watching me on, but thank you so much. And come back for more content. See you soon.